Hey guys, it's Manga here, and in this video we're going to be designing my character Obi from Apple Black, while also dishing out some tips and tricks here and there for you guys producing your own projects, all from my experience. There are many tips out there, but here are the ones that easily come to mind. When you put stuff down, you draw, you do some designs, you always want to take a step back, think about it. There is no rush, and at least not too much unless you have a deadline, but take a step back, think about it, and then come back and see what you've done. Here's another. Don't be afraid to use the influences in your head. Sometimes some people are afraid of, getting called all sorts of names. But I want you guys to know that originality is important, but nothing is 100% original and nothing is 0% original. You just want to make sure that the percentage is really high. So you want to use the influences in your mind and to really give them a unique original twist to make sure they come off as original as possible. And there, honestly, you need to be genuine and honest with yourself. Another tip would be iteration and exploration, man. Explore your ideas and do several versions, several iterations. Usually your first idea is not your best idea. Usually. So here's an example with my character Caesar here. As you can see from the jump, there are a couple things that I always keep in mind that I know I want for sure. But you can see the progression starting from this iteration to the next, and I just keep going. Sometimes I draw the character over and over just so I get used to it. That way when I'm drawing it in the series, I don't be forgetting the actual design. Once I nailed the design, I knew he was on the cover, so I did that. Also had to figure out what the colors were going to be, so there is another set of experimentation that goes into that as well. And it's all part of the concept phase. You can see even with the cover, I have the sketch of the cover. I'm figuring out where Caesar is going to be placed, where Santa's going to be placed, and how he's going to be positioned, and voila. Another key tip would be to get feedback from credible sources. I remember when I was putting BACASSI together, and I had several iterations and ideas going into it. In fact, originally it wasn't called BACASSI, it was called First World Underworld. And I was playing around with the designs for the lead characters, Damon, Shauna, and Wilton, and some of the names were actually slightly different. Wilton's hip, techie look needed to be on point. Shauna's demonic look needed to be on point. Damon also needed to be on point. The jacket and just like his whole hip-hop vibe and very punky vibe needed to be on point as well. I was actually putting this series together during my masters, and my teacher kind of served as an editor for not just the character designs, but also for the story, storyboards, literally every single step. And he was a strong guide, a credible voice, guiding me through the whole thing. Even the name change from First World Underworld, because I actually liked the first name, but again, usually your first idea is not your best, even though that wasn't my first idea for the title. But overall, I do think BACASSI is a much stronger name, but I feel maybe that's a video for another time to just talk about my experiences actually working with my professor. He was my major professor for the masters, and BACASSI was part of my thesis. So it was great experience working with him, and just shooting ideas off one another was awesome. Helped tremendously that he's probably a bigger anime fan than me. So I've taken all that I've learned and all the tips that I'm giving you guys and I've applied it to my own series. I make alterations and fixes when I can, and I went over this in the last video. This is another example, an early iteration of Vishal, who shows up in Apple Black, and you can see the final version on the right. But I was figuring out his design, figuring out his wand. The concept of wands in my manga are different, and I'll explain later. Vishal's wand here is some kind of catapult, so I'm kind of designing that, and here's more stuff, figuring out covers for chapter 1.1 and 1.2 of Apple Black. You can see the sketch and you can see what they actually ended up being. I also have videos that go into detail showing you guys how I created them from scratch using my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. My sketchbook is a mess, it's not as organized. Usually if you're doing all these designs, you want them to be organized so that if you're working on a team, everyone can easily understand what's going on. But I'm a one-man army, so who cares? Even with Obi, I knew I wanted his wand or his abilities to be based in some kind of electricity or lightning, but the actual wand I struggled with a bit. I had ideas for a set of drums, I had ideas for, some sticks, I had ideas for some blades. As you can see, toying around with the idea of something he could just pull from his back. Now you guys have only seen Obi in this form while he's wearing this cloak, but today we're going to be doing some concepts and character design type stuff for what's underneath. Real quick, that was another version of Vishal, also with the catapult, just playing around with other designs. You can see other characters I'm kind of fooling around with. So this was my first idea for Obi underneath the cloak, and I definitely really wasn't feeling it all too much. Something was missing. Then I was also designing how the wand would be. At first I was playing around with the idea of this kind of blade, almost like a shuriken that just spins. And then I had another idea for his design, what's underneath, and this was the first time I actually looked at it and really liked what I saw. We can see all these blades, different versions of what I had in mind, and I was playing around with the names of what I'll call the wands, because wands have names. But I decided to go with the name that was tied to my Nigerian roots. Played around with Thor, Zeus, Blitz, Indra, Jupiter, and they all kind of had some tie-in to electricity or lightning, things like that. But I think the Nigerian roots one sounded really cool, and it was a blend of Shango, it's tied to like the god of thunder, and then Chukwu, which is derived from like Igbo in Nigeria, which is heavily associated with a higher power. It's almost blending two different tribes, because the Shango is more Yoruba, and then the Chukwu is definitely Igbo, giving us a wand name, SHANGOCHUKWU. I played around with other names that were kind of doing the same thing, Shangochi, Shango, Shangujo, but I liked SHANGOCHUKWU the best. Then with the wand, I had several ideas of how I wanted it to play in battle, and some ideas of similar situations with like Hisage from Bleach and how he'd spin the blade and swing it. Even though here it'll only be one blade, I know I wanted something that could spin, go forward, and it was tied to his body based on his abilities. A wand with easy access placed behind it. So first, let me explain what a wand in Apple Black actually is. In Apple Black, a wand could be anything. It's really just an object that amplifies the effects of a sorcerer's spell. For example, if a sorcerer's ability was maybe singing you to sleep, her wand or his wand could be maybe a microphone. You know what I mean? And then that microphone maybe amplifies it in some kind of way. I can get really technical with it, but that's the base of what I'm talking about. When I do that definition, I always like to hear what you guys would imagine your wand to be if you were in my world. You can leave it in the comments. I always like to read them. Some of y'all are ridiculous. And no, a wand cannot be a physical part of your body. It has to be an object. It could be a customized object, but an object. So no arms or fingers or stuff like that. Another quick tip would be to have a little fun. Sometimes some of the decisions you make regarding the design could be nods to certain things, references, Easter eggs. It could be references to mythology, history, a list of things. Sometimes it could be references to something a little more personal. It's kind of up to you, but it's good practice to be able to justify the decisions you make. An example of this would be putting the little mask on. Maybe he doesn't want to get sick. Or he's a stealthy character, and covering parts of your face or your whole face is kind of associated with that line of work. Putting in the clothing, obviously they are parts of the character that have already been decided that we can see beyond the character's cloak, and parts that we can't. But I know the character is wearing a vest. I like the ideas from one of the earlier drafts, and I wanted a very unique frontal view, and that's what I'm figuring out here versus just straight up buttons. Different material at the top of the vest. I like the idea of the folded sleeves. And then the gloves, I wanted the gloves to play a role in the way Obi kind of uses his wand in battle. So the thumb is going to be open. It's going to be a glove that covers most of his hand, and except for the thumb, and the thumb is kind of like, I guess, one of the best parts he uses to pass current, right? So he'd be passing current with his wand. His whole power is the lightning aspect. So how the wand would work, especially after we figure it out, is I know I want it to be something he can toss and get back, but not like Captain America's shield. I want it to always have a connection to him, because the current is coming from him, and then he uses it to set traps, slice, all sorts of things. His abilities are very similar to the main character of Darker Than Black, in the way the lead there kind of uses their electric powers, often referred to as Chinese Batman. Have a little bump towards the wrist of the glove where some wires can be, and that's kind of like what he will use to connect to his wand, whatever the wand is that he's tossing and getting back. So sometimes you might want to have a practical element to the costume or the design, where you're putting things that actually make sense and not just look cool. Again, some things were just a given, like I already designed those and they've debuted in the book, so they're set in stone, or as set in stone as they can be for now, like his headgear, certain aspects of his glove, even his shoes, which we will see in a moment. But everything else is kind of open, and that's what we're exploring in this video. I thought it was funny that he does have the lightning aspect to him, and he has like the mask thing going on, so it's very Kakashi, even though I didn't plan it. And so as a result, a lot of people, when they saw Obi for the first time with the mask on, they thought, maybe I was doing like a running gag with it. But no, I have like a cool reveal where he reveals the mask in the book. But it's not like a Naruto Kakashi thing where it's like a running gag. No. And that's why it wasn't a big deal when I revealed his face in a previous video showing a scar. Then I was still solidifying what was underneath the mask. Sorting out his belt, holding up his pants, but also a belt towards the back, which we'll show in a little bit, will have like a little pouch for him to place his wand. So sometimes you want to think about where you put your weapons and things like that. I remember playing Devil May Cry 1 and like Dante would put a sword in the back of his jacket and I'd just be thinking, is it floating? Is it just glued to his back? So sometimes you want to think ahead and figure out where you're going to place certain things. Again, you want a practical element to your design sometimes. Sometimes, it depends on your style. And then I'm going to have some of the wires wrap around him, especially in his torso. It's never going to run out of wire. I can almost see a scenario where he can use his weapon. I'm thinking, this blade that he tosses connected to the wires and form some kind of spider web into a room, and all the enemies are all wrapped and he can just shock them all in one go. I think that'd be really cool, or something to that effect. It's crazy to think that there was a time I was considering his powers be water-based. Thank God I did not do that, because I think we made the right call. So for the pants, I wanted something simple, something that's familiar with the world, so there'd be like a few other characters, not that many actually, but a few characters who kind of have similar pants. That just makes the character feel more, just have similar pants that makes the character feel more in tune with the world. Changing the material slightly at the knees just to make him feel more like a patchwork, just to give him a little edge, not make him feel clean. I almost gave him some like zipper line in between each leg for the pants, but it was getting too complicated, and it's already kind of complicated at the top, and I didn't want to do the same at the bottom. I'm also keeping in mind I want to be able to remember all this stuff, or at least easily look back and forth, knowing that I may be drawing this character over and over and over. I don't want to make it too crazy. Fun fact, that's part of the reason why Naruto stopped wearing goggles, I believe, unless I'm wrong, and that's they introduced the whole idea of the headbands. Or if the headbands were going to be a thing, that's cool, but it was all to simplify stuff rather than drawing complicated goggles over and over and over. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. If I am, who cares? I believe I read it somewhere. But moving on, I like the fold. I like the folds on his pants. Again, it's something that I do more often in the series. Sano, at least in his latest design, kind of has those as well. Got some pant holes on the side, reminiscent of like, cowboy pants, or the pants you'll see on a Shawn Michaels. The shoes, those are set in stone, so I'm not really thinking too much in that realm. The real struggle comes now figuring out how the wand looks exactly. I know I wanted a blade on each end, for sure. I know I didn't want it too big, because again, if he's stealthy, he would be revealing himself if the wand was huge. So then I have the wire connecting the wand to his torso. Initially I was thinking about the idea of the wires only connected to his torso, but I also like the idea of at least smaller sets in the wrist area of his glove, and so the wand will be connected to either one. So still exploring and figuring stuff out. Now I'm just trying to figure out how the pouch behind him would look, and it's going to be a little difficult if the blade is going to be pointing out. It has to be a very unique looking pouch to still keep the blades in check. But I also don't like the idea of the blades kind of pointing out, which again means that the blades can't be that big. But I do like the idea of it being behind him, and that he can just kind of reach out back and then pull it out. Then I thought of an option where the blades kind of extend, not much, almost like they just open and then close, like open just enough to create a handle and then close, when you don't want one, making SHANGOCHUKWU easier to store. Also played around with alternate frontal views of his vest with just simple buttons, and because I do want buttons in there some way, so I can find a way to integrate them, but I still want a very unique look. I like how the vest looks in this form. After all the struggles, it hit me. especially looking back at all the concept art stuff we saw in the previous video on Pinterest. I remembered Killua. And Killua used the yo-yo, and the yo-yo is perfect, right? I also like the idea of being able to say a wand is just a simple object, you know, aside from maybe a few customizations here and there. Like a wand is just a glove or a necklace or a sword, or I don't want to do swords too much though. I want to have simple objects and find creative ways to use them in battle. So a yo-yo, perfect. But I will customize it a little bit to blend with its original form, with the original designs we have here so far. And I'll have blades at each end, and maybe the blades can kind of pop in and out. So in some ways the yo-yo can just be played with like a regular yo-yo, but in some ways the yo-yo can just be used like a regular yo-yo. But you know, imagine a villain kind of catches it with his hands, and then the blades kind of come out, so the yo-yo is released, so that the SHANGOCHUKWU is released, and Obi can like get it back. Again, another coincidence. I haven't seen that much Hunter x Hunter. I think I stopped where Gon got like a tape or a radio or something like that from his dad, and I haven't watched since then. So I can't. My Killua knowledge isn't that strong, but I'm pretty sure there is some electricity association to the character. So again, coinkydink. Obi is very different from all the other characters mentioned so far. There is a very weird, ridiculously humorous side to him where he's serious but doesn't know he's funny in a way, almost like the butt of a joke sometimes. But he can definitely get down and be serious where you do take him seriously. But there is a certain naivety that comes with him. Naivety, however it's pronounced. I'm not sure I'm explaining it right, but Dynamite comes to mind. Where he comes off, in some cases, unknowingly funny. Unplanned. This right here is a little bit of prop design. I'm trying to draw the wand from different sides as well for a better understanding of how it, works. Like the yo-yo is perfect. As you throw it, it's spinning. You can do some really cool visuals with it. And then you have the lightning all around it. It's gonna look swell. You still have to figure out exactly how he'd be passing current with his thumb, and if it's gonna be connected to the wires in his glove. I think there's a lot of potential here. And I think this is the way that I'm gonna go. Unless it changes again right before debut, because usually none of the ideas are set in stone, especially during this concept phase, until it actually shows inside the book. And at that point, it's as set in stone as possible. So in the future, we'll see what happens, because we're going to see a lot of action from Obi in Volume 3 of Apple Black, which is why I have to make a decision now for, all the things I need to do. This also makes the pouch much easier because it's just a yo-yo fitting in. Hell, there'll be space to put other stuff in there if I want to. And I think that's it for now. I think these are just easy tips that you guys can follow. Hopefully you learned a thing or two from this video. Not too complicated. Obviously there are more complicated tips like shape language, using the triangle and square and circle and all the different things that they mean, connotations and so on, or the silhouette test to make sure the overall design, just looking at it, is interesting. And maybe I'll go into those in future videos and we'll explore that together. For now, just make sure that you follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Stay tuned for Apple Black Volume 3. Don't forget to like United States and smash that subscribe button and hit that bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Again, check out Saturday AM, where Apple Black is published and serialized. You can check out our other series and download our free mobile app. We actually just dropped the prologue of our Infinity War crossover type event. It's going to feature our characters in one story. I think it's going to be really cool. It's called Saturday Wars. Oh, and the prologue is free on the app for you guys to go read right now. It also has a starter guide issue that kind of goes into detail about who we are for those who are completely clueless as to what Saturday AM is. The starter guide also has character profiles of our characters, including Sano from Apple Black, the lead character. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Get 2 free months of Skillshare. Check out my other videos, guys. More to come. It's Whyt Manga, and I'm out.